Hello everyone, this is the first installment in a series I would like to make where I explain a certain part of Lord of the Rings, which people tend to misunderstand. Today I will start with how the Balrogs really look. I hope to clear up some confusion caused by the movies and just general misconceptions. Let's start with the most controversial part first, the wings. Let me clear up my position on the subject first. The Balrogs have wings. Now, for some evidence. Quote number 1.
Its wings were spread from wall to wall.
Now, some people would argue that this is just a simile, as but a moment before, it was referred to as having a shadow like wings, a sort of simile to metaphor progression. According to them, another case of that was here.
Easterlings with axes and Varyags of Khand, Southrons the Scarlet, and out of far Harad, black men, like half-trolls with white eyes and red tongues.
And
East rode the knights of Dol Amroth, driving the enemy before them, troll men and Varyags and orcs that hated the sunlight.
both quotes from the Battle of Pelennor Fields. However, how do we know the men-like half-trolls are the same as the troll men? In the second quote, nowhere were Southrons or Easterlings mentioned. If they were mentioned, it would imply the quote is referring to the same group of people. In addition, half-trolls exist. That very line proves it. Also, the word the troll men is half troll and half men, implying these were the half-trolls from earlier. And if half-trolls exist, and they were nowhere else mentioned, then these must be them. Sauron has control over trolls, so obviously half-trolls would also serve them. This means that it is likely that these were half-trolls indeed. We also have a precedent for shadows turning out to be wings.
Suddenly a shadow, like the shape of great wings, passed across the moon. The figure lifted his arms, and a light flashed from the staff that he wielded. A mighty eagle swept down and bore him away.
There are also cases of flight.
Far beneath the ruined halls of Angband, in vaults to which the Valar, in the haste of their assault, had not descended, Balrogs lurked still, awaiting ever the return of their lord. And now, swiftly they arose, and passing over Hithlum, they came to Lambeth as a tempest of fire.
It should be noted, this is not a case of flight, where the Balrogs could just be going really fast. They went over Hithlum. This was also calculated at supersonic speed, link in the description, which is a bit impractical for a runner. Another anti-wing argument is that none of Morgoth's servants had, quote, yet assailed the air.
But he loosed upon his foes the last desperate assault that he had prepared, and out of the pits of Angband there issued the winged dragons that had not before been seen, for until that day no creature of his cruel thought had yet assailed the air.
However, just because the Balrogs didn't assail the air doesn't mean they couldn't. As I will explain later, there is a scientific argument for the Balrogs having wings. It is likely that the Balrogs would have much difficulty maneuvering in air, and their wings would be more useful for rising into the sky and gliding, with their wings accelerating them, to their destination, instead of rapid dodging and air combat. Not to mention, using a sword or whip is hard in the sky. Additionally, the Balrogs were Aenir. They could change their forms. My theory is that Durin's Bane shapeshifted. This is why the cloud of shadow stretched, i.e. spread out, from wall to wall, seemingly of its own accord. Whether something is a solid, liquid, or gas, it doesn't move sideways and then stay hovering in air, even if it's connected to something, of its own accord. This also allows both interpretations to be true. The first line described the shadows formed by Bane, while the second describes them after he transformed them into real wings. It is also unfair to say that the Balrogs couldn't change forms because Morgoth and Sauron can't. Occam's razor dictates that we take the argument that requires the least leaps in logic. This requires no leaps in logic and solves all the confusion, no less, as Aenir have been repeatedly shown to change forms, while any individual Aenir losing that power is an assumption in and of itself. Finally, the scientific argument. The Balrogs are described as humanoid, which we will get to later. This means they need massive wings to fly. If their wings can stretch from wall to wall in dwarven architecture, which is known for being obscenely large, that would most definitely qualify. It should be noted that the Balrog is only slightly larger than a human, not gigantic. Also, the reason the Balrog didn't just fly out of the cave he fell into was that he was surprised, as seen by his yelp of fright, and by the time he regained his wits, he was being wailed away at by Gandalf. And, though I know this contradicts the death of the author, the Balrogs are fallen Aenir, angels, which are usually portrayed as winged. Okay, I apologize for that being so long, but it covered some basic information we needed to be on the same page for. Now, a little explanation for the quote-unquote shadow and flame. The Balrogs aren't actually made of shadow or flame. They're just covered in it, kind of like a cloak or armor. It seems that the shadow is a form of matter stuck between a liquid and a gas. Ungoliant was capable of creating tangible webs out of them, and at the same time she was able to seemingly create some form of misty cloak out of it. Likewise, the flame seems to be stuck between a liquid and a solid. It is not completely solid, otherwise it wouldn't be flame and just be some normal material. However, it was capable of locking blades with Gandalf's sword, and after that it shattered, so it was somewhat solid. The fragments were indeed molten fragments, however, so it is at least somewhat liquid as well. In case there is any confusion, I am referring to the quote-unquote flame that makes up the Balrog's weaponry, not the fire that burns around them. To clear up this confusion, I will refer to the seemingly magical kindling as flame, similar to the magical darkness that is shadow, and its more mundane brethren as fire. The Balrog's swords and whips are made of flame, whereas the thing that burns on them is fire. The shadow itself seems to burn, a sort of burning cloak. The sword of Bane was destroyed by impact against Gandalf's force field. This can mean one of two things. First, the shield dispelled the magic that kept the flame together, or second, the shield was strong enough to endure the force of the blow, with Newton's third law doing the rest. I will discuss both of these options further in my magic video. However, I am inclined to believe the latter, as, you see, the blade shattered instead of being reduced to lava or extinguished. You will also note that the Hobbit movies accidentally struck a note of pure lore genius. Sauron, the more shadowy, manipulative servant of Morgoth, attacked with shadow rather than flame, and Gandalf blocked it with the same shield that countered its fiery sibling. There was also his flaming whip, also presumably made of flame. Unlike in the movies, the whip has many throngs on it instead of a single one. When Bane hit the water, his fire was extinguished and he became a creature of slime. Though the shadow was never mentioned, there are 5 possibilities here. Number 1. When the shadow hit water, it became a slime-like substance. Number 2. When the shadow hit water, it was stripped off of Bane, revealing the Balrog's true form. Number 3. Number 2, except with one small difference. Bane is not a creature of slime, rather the slime was in the water. Number 4. Upon hitting the water, Bane transforms into a creature of slime. I find this the least likely. While the Balrog's shapeshifting is certainly a possibility, I do not think this is a case of that. Number 5. Gandalf was just using colorful language to describe Bane without his fire. Contrary to popular belief, horns were never described on the Balrogs, though there was indeed fire from their nostrils. If the shadow and fire really was just a cloak, a sort of attire of their order, then the Balrogs might have humanoid appearances underneath. Indeed, it is likely that each have varying appearances. Some, like possibly Bane, would be more demonic, while others would have more humanoid appearances. Gothmog himself is likely more on the demonic side, and I would personally guess his black axe is made out of shadow. Now, to clear up a little confusion about their names and numbers. Balrog is the name of the group. Bane is the one Gandalf fought, and Gothmog is the leader. There are 7 Balrogs in total at most, and 3 at least. The Balrogs are all Aenir, Maiar specifically. Now, finally, from top to bottom, the Balrogs are surrounded by a cloak of burning darkness. The darkness is a shadow, a magical state of matter caught between a liquid and a gas. This shadow is also burning. Despite not having horns, the Balrogs do breathe fire out of their nose. The Balrogs have 2 massive wings that they can transform the shadow into. In each hand, the Balrogs hold one of 2 weapons, a sword and a many-pronged whip. Both are made of flame, a sibling to shadow, caught between liquid and solid. Gothmog has only a black axe, presumably made of the aforementioned shadow. And finally, under the cloak of burning darkness is a presumably humanoid form, though it likely varies from person to person, some being more monstrous, others being closer to human or elf. And that's all! If you liked this, please give it a thumbs up. If you disliked it, please say what I could do better, but still give me a thumbs up. And remember, this is all my opinion, so it is obviously right. Goodbye!